Hey, it's Neal Dipentino here with Business Breakthroughs. Thank you for joining the show. I've got a great guest with you for you today. This morning I was kind of thinking about how we would position the show and some of the things that we would talk about. And my guest today is all about business and balance and finding that balance. Seems to be a common theme amongst a lot of folks that I talk to today. But as I was getting ready for to come to work this morning, I flipped on my phone and there happened to be this dude on there talking about how to become invisible. Now, it sounds crazy, but it is something that I've been trying to preach to my clients for quite some time now. So today, our guest comes from Houston. He's a business coach with Focal Point Coaching. Has a whole lot of stuff that he can bring to the table for us, and I hope you'll enjoy our conversation with our coach, Brian Weaver. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Neal. Glad to be here.
Well, fantastic. So, we were just kind of laughing about this before we got on the show, and I noticed that you do a lot of videos that you post on LinkedIn, and I've listened to several of them, and this one just kind of caught my ear because this is again something that I've been preaching to clients, and I'll tell you a little story about that here in a minute. But before we get
Mhm.
into that, give us a little bit of a story about your background. Tell us what you're all about and who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, now I work with business owners typically, along with some executives, but mainly business owners to try to really get some balance in their lives. My background coming into all of that was 15 years on the corporate side and not living a balanced lifestyle, and and that wasn't the most fun for sure. And then about 10 years of that being an officer in the Navy and doing that sort of military leadership piece. So it's 25 years of what I would say is not good balance and good work-life balance, and seeing the opportunities where business owners can learn from my mistakes for sure, and do things a little bit better. And whether it's, and that balance isn't just about making themselves happier, but it's also increasing the value of their company at the end of the day.
Right. I think that there's just, we jump into business. We've got this great idea. We know we're going to make money at it. And we go kind of balls to the wall trying to make it happen. And I think initially we start off as, DIYers. And a
Hmm.
lot of times people like continue down that road for a really long time. So instead of building a business, you're really building a job for yourself. So balance is really difficult in that manner.
Exactly. And you hit that, what we call the founder's trap, where when you started and money was tight and you're doing everything, you're doing your own bookkeeping, you're doing your own sales, and you're doing everything throughout the entire process. And that becomes hard to let go, even in a growth cycle, because you remember those lean times and you don't want to live those lean times again. And you feel that if you relinquish some control of those aspects of the company, um, what happens if things turn south again? You're going to have to fire people. People don't like doing that. You're going to have to eat ramen noodles again for a couple of months. People don't like doing that. And trying to break owners of that mindset that they have to live in this scarcity mindset all the time. That's one of the biggest challenges that I have.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that's really holds true a lot for people who were in business in '07. During the recession. We lived it. I had a lot of friends who lost their businesses. Some lost their homes during that time, which is a shame. And so you remember it's always in the back of your mind. So it kind of puts a little bit of fear in the back of your mind to move forward, to hire people, to work with people who maybe they may not do it as well as you could do it on your own, but I guess maybe you don't even know until you try. You're just afraid to try. So I totally agree with that. So how do you overcome that type of situation, Brian?
A lot of times, we have to get into people's ego, and why are things important? Why do they think they need to keep doing things? Sometimes just because they feel that they do it really well and they're really great at it. Um, but we have to look at how the great companies got to where they are, and it wasn't from the founders holding on to all aspects of the business all the time. And just because you're really great at doing certain creative aspects of your business doesn't mean that other people can't be better than you at doing them as well. And that's the thing. We've got to learn as business owners, as business leaders, how do I leverage all the talents around me? And yeah, you may be smart, but they're smarter people than you. So hire them, use them, take advantage of those folk. Not take advantage of them in a bad way, but take advantage of all the positives they bring to you. And that's if we can get past that ego piece and past that fear of failure, that fear of somebody doing something wrong. Fear, we got to get past those two things of ego and fear.
Right.
And it takes a long time. That's not something we do in 30 minutes for sure.
Sure, especially if you come from that kind of a background. I come from, old school Italian family who, like, you always did everything, yourself. You never really had a whole lot of trust in bringing somebody else on to help you and everything. My dad was a business person for years until he finally decided that, this isn't for me. I'm working all the time. I'm never with my family,
Yeah.
but that was that DIY mentality. That's why he was gone all the time. And I see that with a lot of people that I know now. And I was just having a conversation with another gentleman. We're talking about how, especially with younger people, and we were this way probably ourselves when we were younger. It's like we kind of, it's almost like a badge of honor.
I'm still younger.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You got me there. You are a young man. That's right. I'm not. Okay. But I can honestly tell you, I see a lot of people who like they wear working, 18 hours a day as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I look at that as like, why? Why are you doing that? How about yourself?
I saw that. I was working for, it was one of those Fortune 100 sort of companies. And I remember sitting at a conference where people were flying in from their different offices around the world. And we got to the same conference, and I was sitting at a table with them. All they talked about was how many emails they were able to get through on their 16-hour plane trip and how many emails were waiting for them. And all I could think of is, are we selling emails? Is there some sort of money that we're making in the email world versus manufacturing? And listening to how they talked about their, their like you said, their 18-hour workday, like, oh, let's look at me, how great I am, I'm being productive. And all I could think of was like, I would much rather work an efficient 8 to 10 hour day and get a lot done than go through 1,000 emails in 18 hours. That just doesn't seem good for anybody.
No.
So so many people, especially again on the corporate side, really, really, like you said, wear it as a badge of honor. It shouldn't be. I would rather see the business owner rather talk about how much time they spent with their spouse and how much time they got to go spend at a practice, or they got to go coach a little league team or something like that. That's the badge of honor that we should be striving for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes we got to bust our butts and we put in a long day because it's necessary. Whether it's I've got networking events throughout the day, or we've got to make a bunch of sales calls, or whatever it is that you take to get your business going. There's these sprints that we do have to make, but that shouldn't become the norm for the entirety of our business.
Absolutely. I think, we put so much emphasis on, as far as success is concerned, on how much money we make, and obviously making a good living and having a successful business that's profitable. I mean, that's all super important things. That's what we're kind of about with business breakthroughs. But at the end of the day, it's like at what cost? And I think when I interview a new client, I always kind of walk away from somebody when I ask them, what is your goal? And they say, well, I want to make a lot of money. Because really, I mean, that's not a really, I mean, that's a byproduct of the goal, I guess, or it gets a means to an end. But I like to talk to somebody who says, hey, you know what? I want to make a good living. I want to make a good living for the people who work for me, and I want to spend more time with my family. That to me is like honorable.
Yeah, I talked to a guy yesterday. Actually, we were seeing if we were going to be able to work together or not, and he wanted to get out of the business in a few years. He wants to exit, and he wants to have enough money that he can provide for his family still. His biggest concern, though, he said, look, I could sell it now. I could have a little bit of money. I could go do something else, but I wouldn't be leaving something for the employees that I have that have dedicated 10 years to me. I want to make sure that the business is built so that they still have their roles. They still have an ability to build wealth. And that to me, I said, look, let's work together, please, because I'd love to help you on that journey. That's motivating for me. I love to hear those stories where people, they give a crap about something besides just themselves, and I want to have a bunch of money.
Right. I love it. So I want to make a little pivot right here. Okay. So
Yeah.
everything we talked about, balance and everything, and the DIY mentality and everything kind of leads to the post that you put on LinkedIn this morning that I saw
Hmm.
about how to become invisible. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, how to become invisible? Like, okay, like I, first don't get it. But as I listened to it a little bit more, it made a whole lot of sense. When you're talking about being invisible to a homeowner, or I'm sorry, to a business owner, basically, yeah. Um, Basically what you're saying is like, okay, you need to build a business where you don't have to be there all the time, where
Hmm.
you have the systems, the processes, the people in place so that you can walk away anytime and know that your business is going to be taken care of. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I started that whole post with contrasting what I saw again in corporate America, which was this idea of you have to get yourself involved in every part of the business and seen as, I can't let Brian go because he knows all the passwords to all the accounts and has all the keys to all the doors in the building, and he's intricate with everything we do. As a business owner, that doesn't help your value. It does nothing but increase your risk factors when you're trying to sell a business. So if you can, like you said, create systems, have the right people in place, develop your leadership team, um, make sure you've got, and this, we'll get into simple things like, do you have a contract in place with the client, or are you based on a handshake? Um, those are the things that we've got to look at within a business so that you can pull yourself gradually away from it. It does wonders for your home life and your personal life, first off. But second, when you go to sell that business, you're selling a product that's just ready to go. You're not the guy you're not pushing the rope, so to speak, the whole time. It can just be handed off to anybody and they can run it.
Exactly. Working on the processes in the system. I mean, that's
Mhm.
what's really sellable. Because to your point, if I build a business and I'm like the key player in that business and I want to sell it, I either have to go with the business in order to get for the buyer to get the full value of it out of it,
Mhm.
or I have to, devalue the business somewhat when I go to sell it because I'm not no longer involved.
Yeah. And look, and I'm a big fan. We always work on systems and processes, but I remind people, don't forget your managers and your leadership team,
Right.
because somebody's going to be running that business. And a lot of guys don't want to go in and buy a business and then they have to do 80-hour work weeks themselves as well. They want the group of people that are is they want who's leading the sales efforts, who's leading the accounting stuff, who's leading the operations, all those aspects of the business. People need to understand what the roles are and who's leading those aspects of that part of the business as well.
Right, right. I had a situation here recently with a client of mine. I've been a client of mine for over 11 years, which is kind of unusual in my business. But well, not only was he a client, but he became a really good friend. And for years, I kept telling him that we need to, and I didn't use your words and make you invisible, but in essence, that's what I was telling him is that we need to pull you out of the business so that you can enjoy your life. You can do other things. You can spend time with your children. You can go on vacation because you have to be assured that when you're gone, that the business still, is running properly. Unfortunately, this client passed away, and his
Mm-hmm.
brother, who was a minority partner, took over the business, and the systems were all jacked up. I mean, he had to pretty much start over from scratch. Thankfully, he's a really good worker. I mean, great time management guy. Doesn't really understand the advertising world, the marketing world, all that well. He understands his product really well, but he's really open to the idea of let's build the systems, let's build the processes, let's get this thing going so that at some point in time I can step away or I can sell this business and make it profitable.
Yeah. And,
So
and it's funny, just to go off that, you end up with some of these clients that, like, marketing would be a great area to talk about. A lot of people get into that not because they're systems oriented, but because they're creative and they've got great ideas of how to market things and they love that aspect of it. So they might not be the best people to implement those systems. You can talk about it, and we need to build systems and processes. Sometimes the answer is first find somebody either within your company or somebody you can bring in that will build those systems and processes. Because if you're great at that creative aspect of what you're doing, or the visionary aspect, you may not be the best implementer of those.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's really super important, and that's where a coach like yourself comes into play. The guy that I'm referring to, I mean, he's in the service industry. He knows that business back like the back of his hand. I can have
Mm-hmm.
a conversation with him, and he immediately breaks into all of the specs and all the products and the item numbers and the pricing and all that kind of stuff. I have another
Mm-hmm.
client who's in the restaurant business. Same thing. He's a chef, and he is just, I mean, an amazing chef who knows the back end of a kitchen of a restaurant like the back of his hand. But they both realize that that's their forte. That's what they can do well. They need somebody to help them, and that's where I kind of stepped in with them. That's
Yeah.
where you step in with your clients.
Yeah.
Can you give us a couple of examples of maybe some problems, some of the clients that you've had, or a client that you've had in the past that you've worked with, where you had a problem and then you came up with a solution and helped them to find some great results?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas has been, again, working with a client who's very creative. She's got a great team of very creative people on that team, but nobody nobody there likes processes or anything. I've worked with her now for the last, we'll say, 9 months probably, and every week we're looking at what are the processes that she got in place. And I'm also a big fan of streamlining processes. This isn't about building processes that just to have them in place for no reason. What are the core parts of your business that you're dealing with? What are the things that you actually need to do to make money too? Let's identify those things first and make sure that everybody understands the cycle. Your sales team understands what they're supposed to do and what's expected. Your your creative team understands it. Your customer service team understands it, so that you don't have to be holding their hands all the way through the cycle. It became really important because 2 years ago she was an army of one. It was her doing everything, and she's gone from probably $250,000 a year business to about $2 million a year business in 2 years.
Nice.
Um, and so now she's bringing all these people on board, and she's bringing them on without anything in place. She didn't have the little bumper guards in the bowling alley lanes in place for them. So things were happening immediately, and she was having to fire the first sales guy she brought in. She was struggling with some of the other new hires, but again, she didn't have any of the training in place. She didn't have any of the expectations. She didn't have a CRM system, all the things that you'd kind of need to start building a business to take it to where she wants to take it, which is even 10x which what it is today.
Well, yeah, it's fantastic. So, um, I think having the systems in place we talked about just a little bit just a second ago. I mean, that's so super important and everything. I think the main reason is just exactly what you said. So anybody could step into that position and
Mm-hmm.
still continue. Because anytime that you don't do that, and there's a lot of confusion, then it causes confusion throughout the entire organization. I can remember many, many years ago, I went to work for a video distributor. Um, we sold VHS, if you remember what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a sales guy. I was a pretty successful sales guy. He stole me from another company that I was working for, and the first week of the job, he had me working in every department. I mean, I worked in accounting, I worked in
Mm-hmm.
shipping, I worked in receiving, inbound calls, outbound calls. I made coffee. The only thing they kicked me out of the warehouse because I really was terrible with a tape gun. But what it did was it gave me an understanding of what everybody's job was there. So when I needed, and I knew who they were. So if I needed to
Mm-hmm.
talk to somebody about something, I knew where to go, and I knew the processes because it was important when I was in the sales, when I was doing a sale, because I knew how long something would take and what it took to get, from point A to point B. And I just think that's super important. I love what you said.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, look at we're just about out of time. Gosh, it went by really super fast. I'm sorry about that. But if our clients would like to get in contact with you, or I'm sorry, our viewers would like to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing that?
Um, my email is always a great way, bweaver@focalpointcoaching.com. My website is always a great way to get in contact with me. You can come knock on my door here if you want at the house. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can cut. I'm pretty approachable, actually. So it's
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. Sure to appreciate it, Brian Weaver. And that's our show for today. So thrilled you all could be with us. Business Breakthroughs is sponsored by Titan Digital. You can reach them at titandigital.com and check out all of our other great hosts on Small Business Delivered Network at smallbusinessdelivered.com. Thanks a lot for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.